I've failed a million times on the track, and it doesn't shake me. And so it's like, okay, can I come back? Can I put the pieces together? And can we keep doing this?
Welcome back to the deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Alex Rodriguez. So excited to have with us Allyson Felix. She is 7-time gold medals, 11 medals from the Olympics to her credit. She's an entrepreneur in many different ways. She started a shoe company. She started a talent company. She's involved in the LA Olympics coming up. We're so excited to have you, Allyson. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
All right, so let me start with sort of a question that I've been thinking about because there's so many different ways to go with you. How do you identify yourself at this point? Because you do have all of these different things that you've done, but also things that you're doing. Like, how do you describe yourself to the world?
I think I always come back to Olympian. It's the starting place, and I believe that that has allowed me to do so many other things that I'm really passionate about, and so that leads me to entrepreneur. And I still it's so passionate about advocating for women's rights and everything in that lane as well. But I think Olympian kind of wraps it up.
And it's funny, Alex. I remember, so Alice and I got to know each other. I was working on a series that still is going on at Bloomberg called Power Players, and I spent a couple days with her in Los Angeles, and we went to her high school and saw that track that's named after her. And then, of course, there's another track named after you, Allison, at USC, where you went to college, where Alex and I both spent a decent amount of time. This was not, I mean, I remember sort of being surprised at the time that, you took this up in from an athletic perspective, sort of late in life, in the sense of like you sort of rocked up to high school and realized you were like generationally fast. As you look back on those sort of early moments, and as you say, you define yourself as an Olympian, does any of this sort of surprise you that it's all gone this way?
I think all of it. All of it has. I mean, I never, set out to be a professional athlete like that. That was not my family's plan. I think with some Olympians, there is like this roadmap that they're following, and that's always been the intention. They've started when they were like 3 years old, and done all of that. But for me, I stumbled into the sport, and I came in because I was looking for friends in high school, and um, super shy and introvert. So when I look at my path and my journey and where I am today, there's no parts of it that I would have thought that this would have happened. But I think, that's the beauty of life and it taking you to some places you didn't plan.
So for me, Allison, as an athlete, it was around my junior year where I kind of went to the U.S. Olympic team. I looked around and I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm pretty good," and that gave me an incredible amount of confidence when I went back for my junior year at Westminster Christian in Miami. When was that moment for you that you just said, "Hey, this is more than just getting to know friends. I'm actually unique. I'm a unicorn."
Yeah, I think it was similar for me. It was my senior year in high school. And I remember I went to my coach was really great about like kind of pushing me, and he had entered me in this professional race, and it was in Mexico City, and we all flew out there. And for me, I was just excited to compete somewhere, other than the high school. And so we get there, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to do the best that I can. There were Olympians in the race, and really accomplished women. And I ran that race. I was, like, in the very outside lane. I don't think anybody knew that I was there, and I just ran as hard as I could. I remember crossing the line, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, nobody passed me. Like, I actually won this thing." And that I ran the fastest time in the world at that time, and that was kind of the shift for me where it was like, "Oh, okay, like, I have the ability to do something different, and maybe this is gonna be bigger than just getting a scholarship, to go to college."
And Allison, what event was it, and what was the time?
It was the 200 meters, and I had ran 22:11, a high school record at the time,
Wow!
yeah. Yeah.
Wow!
That's so interesting too, because Alex, I know your story pretty well. I'm hearing echoes too of your high school coach saying, "Listen, this is what's going to happen next. This is the roadmap." And it sounds like Allison, you were in a position to sort of have people around you, and we're going to talk about your brother later on because he's been so critical in your journey, especially as a business person. But those people who essentially said, no, you can do this. And then of course you have to go out and do it. But sort of having the people who can say, this is the direction, this is the path I see for you is critical.
Yeah. I mean, because I didn't even know, I at that point I had been running track for that was like my 4th year ever running track. And so I didn't
Wild.
know, I didn't know the history, I didn't know the sport. And Alex, I don't know how it was for you. My coach, he was a volunteer coach. Like he didn't know either. He knew that there was so much potential there and he saw the talent. But then he really wanted to help like surround me with people who were knowledgeable as I was going out for the next level. But it was really about the people around me seeing that, okay, you have a gift. And yeah, I think that's incredible when somebody can see it in you and believe in you before you even know yourself. I just think that just it speaks volumes, and then I think you wanna rise to the occasion as well because it's like, well, this person who has done it before and has all this experience is telling me that, this is possible, and, yeah, I feel like that was my experience kind of on the next level, when I reached the next coach that I worked with, it was just like, "Okay, if you believe in me, then I know I can do this."
And I remember you and I have talked about this a little bit before, but you know, there is this moment too for you where it's not just like, oh, I can go out and win races, but I can essentially do this for a living. I'm going to do this as my life's work for some amount of time. What was that moment where you realized, okay, there's sort of financial viability? It's like you didn't come from a huge amount of money, like there's some risk involved, but what's the moment where you see, okay, like sponsors are showing up, I can actually fund myself to make a career out of this?
Yeah, after I ran that time in Mexico City and, I then qualified for the world championship team and things started to happen. And then that's when, the sponsors started to come and they started to, talk to my family about, the possibilities of not going to college. And at that time, there had never been a track athlete from the US that didn't go to college and went straight to the pro. So it felt very risky. It felt like I think people were really critical of that idea. Um, and it was just me kind of leaning on my family. My family didn't really know either because, we were all new to the sport, but they were just dedicated parents, like they would do their homework, they talked to their friends and just tried to figure it out. But it was really at that moment where we started to understand, like, oh, this could be a career. Cause for me, I don't even think I had that understanding. I understood, the Olympics, but I didn't know that, people were out here doing this for a living.
We're gonna fast forward a little bit because and it sounds ridiculous to sort of essentially like yada 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 a bunch of like gold medals and world championships and things like that. But you did all that, and there are many great interviews that you've done where people could learn a lot more about that. But we do want to talk about sort of the business of Allyson Felix because it is so fascinating. It is not a straight line, and obviously the biggest moment comes. What seems like the biggest moment probably in your life is you sign with Nike and then you break up with Nike. And, you have this moment where you essentially have to leave them because they will not pay you empirically what you're worth. Walk us through that decision. You go public with this. I know you've told the story a lot, but like it's critical for people, I think, to understand not just who you are, but like what you did and the implications of that.
Yeah, yeah, that moment changed my life. As we've talked about a little bit before, I'm an introvert, I was really about just doing my job. Head down, I'm here to try to win medals, try to break records. That's what it's all about. And when I decided to start a family and I had been with Nike for almost a decade at the time, I did have a lot of fear in that moment because I had seen what my teammates and my colleagues had been through, and they had really struggled through motherhood. And what was happening to a lot of them was their contracts were being paused once they, shared that they were pregnant, or they would hide a pregnancy and try to get a new contract. And so I was renegotiating my contract at the time, and I did not disclose my pregnancy yet. And my renegotiation was already starting off in a very bad place. The offer was 70% less than what I had been making before. And so that really amplified my fear. I felt like the same thing is going to happen to me that had happened to all of my teammates. And so I did what they did. I hid my pregnancy. I started to train in the dark. I did all of these things because essentially there was nothing on paper to secure even this 70% less. And this drug on for a really long time. We continued to try to negotiate and it wasn't going well. And so I really had this moment where I shifted my ask away from my concern around the financials to asking for maternal protections. And simply what that means in track and field is that if you go to the Olympics or you go to world championships, you get a bonus. But if you don't, you get a reduction. And so if you are pregnant, or if you just had a baby, there's nothing in place to protect you. And so, what I was looking at was facing another reduction even on top of the 70% if I didn't make it back to the world championships months after having a baby. And that just seemed absurd. And it's what so many women had been facing for so long. And so that's what I asked for. And actually, when I, shared that and, I had disclosed my pregnancy, shared all the things. And they said, okay, you could have that time to be able to recover. And I was like, great. That's all the money's the money, whatever. I can accept that. But this to me is a non negotiable. And so when the contract came back, I was shocked because there was no mention of pregnancy, no mention of maternity. And so what we learned is that they were not willing to tie this time to be able to recover from giving birth to maternity. They were willing to do it for me, but in their words, they said they wanted to take it case by case basis. And so that's really what led to, writing this op-ed in the New York Times and, sharing what I had been facing and so many of my teammates and colleagues as well. And that was terrifying because, it was everything that was opposite of, what I was about. But I deeply believed in what I was doing and deeply believed that things needed to change and came out with that op-ed. And I think it was something like 2.5 weeks later that they changed their policy along with other companies. And today they offer 18 months of maternal protection for all their female athletes. And yeah, other companies are standing on that as well.
Yeah, it's a huge moment. I mean, it's a huge moment in the history of the sport. It's a huge moment in gender equity when it comes to sports. And what's interesting, Alex, is then Allison decides to take it a step further and say, I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to start my own shoe company, which is not for the faint of heart, as someone who has worn a lot of athletic shoes over the course of his life can attest to. And so I know Alex and I are both interested in this. Talk about that moment where you decide to start your own company.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. Like, I think when you don't know what you're up against, in that moment, you're so passionate and, this is the next step. I can't find another sponsor. So, I'm talking to Wes, like, let's do it ourselves. And it
Wes,
feels,
is your brother? Sorry.
yes, my brother Wes. Then we take steps to actually do it. And it was a huge thing. I think you almost need that piece of not knowing how hard this industry is because had we known, maybe we don't go into it. But the moment that really pushed us forward was, I start looking for another shoe sponsor. I can't find one. And when Wes says, I think we should do this ourselves, what we thought we were creating was, just shoes for me to wear in the Olympics. But as we, did a deep dive into the industry and we start talking to people, we learned of this bigger problem. And that is that shoes weren't being made for women. And so a shoe is built off of a lass, which is a mold of a foot. And it's the mold of a man's foot that has been used to make women's footwear. And that was the thing that really pushed us forward and said, this is so much bigger, than me or what I went through. This is saying it's time for the industry to change. We have to be making shoes specifically for women, and they can't be an afterthought. And we can't just have this brilliant marketing that is telling women that they're wearing shoes made for them when they're really just wearing men's shoes.
Jason, you mentioned it's never a straight line. Well, that's so true in my case. In 2014, I served a very long suspension for PED use. And during this time, as I'm thinking I'm in the fourth quarter of my career, I was always thinking and planning life after baseball. And then I have this kind of giant problem that I got myself into. And that was a very scary and daunting time for me because I'm like, well, it's hard enough to go from athlete to entrepreneur. And now I have this big kind of red mark on me. And it was very scary. Did you go through that? I mean, with the op ed, you have this controversy with Nike. Arguably, with all the gold medals you made, your legacy is going to be you changed and you made a huge impact for all women, including my daughters, which is incredible. But did you go through a very scary time of going like, "Oh boy, is this the right time?" As you talk with Wes, your agent, talk us through that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm very interested in your perspective on this as well, but being an athlete, who is moving in the space of an entrepreneur, there was so much imposter syndrome. There was so much feeling of like, do I actually belong here? I'm completely in a new industry now, and I'm raising capital, and I think in one sense it is great being an athlete, and you get every meeting, and the doors are opened, but then sometimes you step into the room and I'm like, is this a meet and greet, or is
Mhm.
you don't feel like you're being taken seriously, or the question is, well, who's really going to run the company? And so it's fighting all of that, especially, as a person of color, as a woman of color, knowing the statistics around how much, VC money is going to us. It's such a small number. And so it did feel like I'm just fighting against so much. And it just feels like this is so hard, and it's been hard at so many different kind of levels. I think it's asking yourself, like, do you have the fight still? After all the athletic career, do you still have the fight to break into something new? And to me, it was really my why that continued to push me forward. But did you experience something similar? Did you face that imposter syndrome, or was it more of a kind of a natural progression for you?
No, there was nothing natural about it. And I remember how big your story was with Nike, and how proud I was of you.
Huh.
And also, as a man of color and someone who went through a very, very public event. I mean, if you think about it, it was Major League Baseball, it was the New York Yankees, it was PEDUs. I
Hmm.
mean, it had every buzzword, and it was
Yeah.
a big, big national, not a global story. And at the same time, of the heels of that, I'm trying to introduce myself to the market as an entrepreneur and how important vital trust is. So I was having red marks across the board,
Mm.
which created a lot of headwinds, and I needed to find a way to kind of never give up, because I think that's what you and I have as athletes is we have this ability to just keep pushing forward no matter how much the odds are against us. And then I just took it one step at a time, and I took very, very small steps. But as long as I was moving a little bit forward every day and rebuild my reputation, and now it's been 11 years, and I'm in a good place, but it was one of the most challenging things that I've ever had to endure, and it's made me better for it.
Oh.
My question for you is, you had this imposter syndrome you mentioned, but you're also an introvert. I'm a little bit of an introvert until you get to know me. Like
Yeah.
Jason thinks I talk too much now, but we're
I
very good
mean,
friends.
when Alex says he's an introvert, I just like, can you hear my eyes rolling at this point?
but but did you feel, Allison, like how did you introduce yourself into the business community? That sometimes is very scary. I would say all the time is very scary.
Yeah, for me, it did feel like all the time at the beginning. It was just so new and so uncomfortable. Going into so many rooms. I'm used to being the only at a lot of different points in my life, but I found it particularly hard in this space. I think that I had to remind myself that I did belong, and so many things that allowed me to be successful on the track are the same things that will allow me to be successful in this new area. They might all be called something different in business, but I know how to work hard. I know how to do something, be the best in the world at something. And I just have to translate those skills and the perseverance and the dedication. To me, that has been the part that has served me the most, because, in business, there's so many ups and downs, and it's about, really coming back and not being afraid. I think that's the thing that has been at the core is, I've failed a million times on the track, and it doesn't shake me. And so it's like, okay, can I come back? Can I put the pieces together? And can we keep doing this?
I'll share one quick advice that my good friend and mentor Magic Johnson taught me many, many years ago. He said, Alex, whether it's you, Allison, myself, when we go into a meeting, we can take every meeting and we'll be very successful at taking meetings. However, usually ends up with a picture and a signed autographs, and that's it. He goes, when you get into those meetings, it's your job to stay in those meetings. And how you stay in those meetings is you have to have a world class team. It can't just be Magic Johnson. It has to be Pat Riley, James Worthy, Kareem, Kobe. You have to go in there with a team that's worthy of winning championships in the world of business. And that's one of the greatest lessons I've learned. And as I thought about building my team and building my company, the one thing that you and I can do is we are pretty good at recruiting great talent, is identifying it. And then how do you bring them on board to sharing your vision to go and build this great company that you want to build? And yeah, so I pass that along with you because it served me so well as an entrepreneur.
I appreciate that. That's incredible advice. And I'm so grateful for, you, for Magic, for Serena, for athletes who have been in this space and who have been really transparent about their journeys, because it is a difficult road. And I think, it's hard enough to deal with retirement. But then, when you have these really ambitious goals to be successful in business as well, to be able to look at people who have done it, um, it's very helpful, and to me, it's been refreshing. I feel like in sports, it is so competitive sometimes. In the world of business, I have found it really refreshing to be able to connect with people who want to see you win and want to help you. And I think, coming back to team, that is everything. And it's been, we've all been a part of some incredible teams, and knowing how to build them and how to be a team player, is definitely so relevant in this new world.
Well, and that's a really nice and natural segue into Always Alpha. Walk us through the decision to create the talent management firm. Also, I believe you partnered with your brother Wes on that and some other folks. So walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it comes back to when you don't see something in the world that you feel should exist, creating it and not being afraid to do so. And I think creating Saysh first really helped me to see that that's possible. And so Wes, my brother, he's a couple years older than me. He represented me for the majority of my career as an agent, and he, built a really great boutique agency that really focused on Olympians. And when I got to kind of the end of my competing years, I was kind of having these conversations with Wes, was like, I wish I could do this again. I feel like I learned so much, and women's sports is, having incredible momentum. I was just like, I feel like it would be so incredible to be able to put all of this knowledge to use. And that's really where the idea of Always Alpha came from. It was, saying we want to create an agency that is fully focused on women's sports. Like, we are all in on women's sports. It's not about, we can sign, this male athlete, and, that's going to take care of the bills, and we're all in. And so our firm is fully focused on women's sports. We really are kind of modeled off the entertainment industry, where we are a management firm, and we can also, work with others, but really representing female athletes and the ability to build their business on the field of play and off the field as well. And so, when people have come to me, athletes, and um asked me, how was I able to do this or that, really being able to point them into the direction and say, well, we bring the best people in the world to build your business out and to really walk this journey with you and create what you want to create. And it's not this cutter kind of model that comes from some of your more traditional larger agencies.
It's funny as we start to sort of wind down a little bit. There's one big topic that I want to sort of end and sort of go back to where we began, which is you're an Olympian. That is how you identify yourself. And now, in 3 years, almost exactly 3 years from now, your hometown, Los Angeles, is going to host the Summer Olympic Games. You've stayed deeply involved in the Olympics. You were recently inducted into the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame. You're deeply involved in the organizing committee to bring and put on a successful games there in Los Angeles. From a business person's perspective, because now that's the hat you wear, what are your sort of biggest visions? What are the biggest challenges for bringing the Olympics successfully to LA?
Well, first, I'm so excited that the Olympics are coming to LA. I think it's incredible. But yeah, I'm wearing a different hat this time. I'm an IOC member. I sit on the LA 28 board. I think, the biggest challenge is looking at this from a standpoint of it's almost looking like a world championship in every sport happening every single day. That is a massive, undertaking. And so um a lot will happen between now and 2028. And being a Angelino, we know like the excellence that happens here and the environment. So I think that'll be incredible. But I think it's just making sure that everything works seamlessly. And that's a big task, everything from athletes having the best, experience, facilities, able to have their best performances to all of the moving about of so many people coming to the city, all of it working together.
What's it going to be like for you being a host rather than a participant, do you think?
I think it's gonna be different. The one thing that I wished, my whole career was to be able to have a home games. I think there's nothing, like that experience. And so I'm really excited for the American athletes who are going to be able to have that home field advantage. And so I think it'll be incredible to be able to support. I'm looking forward to bringing my own kids and letting them experience it. There's nothing like seeing the Olympics up close. And so for Angelinos, for, so much the world that will be here. I'm looking forward to the impact that that will have. I think there will be a lot of new fans for a lot of different sports. I think we have the ability to really leave a legacy here in Los Angeles and with the people here. And as we send people back home as well, how they will be touched and moved by the games.
I get asked all the time, Alex, do you ever get back in the batting cage? And my answer is like, no, I don't. Um, I do love the game and I miss the game, but do you ever go out on the track and just kind of do like some workouts, some sprints, plyometrics? Do you miss it?
I do miss it, and I do. It is, what I know best, and so as far as, like, workout-wise, I know what I'm doing on a track, and I also feel like I have to stay a bit ready. My daughter
Mhm.
is, she's I'm starting to see, we were at the beach the other day, and you know how to race her. I had to, like, let her know what it is. There's not gonna be any winning of anybody else around here for quite some time, so I gotta make sure that I'm able to, like, when someone challenges me, that I can deliver.
All right, so we end every episode with a lightning round. It's 5 questions. We'll bounce it back and forth. The only advice is just the first thing that comes to your mind. So I'll start and then Alex will pick up. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. All right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received on deal making or business?
Mm. You don't have to you don't have to know it all. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room.
Who's your dream deal making partner?
Hmm. Melody Hobson.
Oh, former guest on the deal. We'd love to see that. Which team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
The Lakers.
What's your hype song before you go into a big meet or negotiation?
Oh, I gotta start using it. Okay, so it's Beyonce, I'm a Diva, every track meet. But I like that. I would think, before I go into my board meetings now, I gotta I gotta start playing it.
It's a good one. All right. And finally, what's your advice for someone listening who wants a career like yours, fully knowing that no one's ever going to have a career exactly like yours? But what would your advice be?
Um, you don't have to wait for a perfect moment to start something, to do something different. Just do it. Put that first step forward, and if you deeply believe in something, go after it.
Allyson Felix, I was so excited when I knew that this was happening. It's so great to reconnect with you. Thank you for your good humor and wisdom, and it was really a treat. So thank you for your time.
So
Thank
nice
you.
to talk to you, Jason. So good to see you, Alex.
Thanks.